My name is Isra Hirsi, and I'm a freshman at South High School.
Hi, I'm Manny Nuñez, and I'm a freshman at South High.
Hi, my name is Zigi, Kaiser, and I'm a freshman at South. We're doing a project shedding light onto the prison regime in the U.S. Our focus is the unconstitutional prison regime and its racial disparities. In 1972, there were 300,000 people in jails and prisons. Today, there are more than 2 million. The rise of incarceration rates began in 1973 and was the result of bad policy making and had detrimental effects on POC, especially African Americans. The prison regime has expanded U.S. white supremacy, which manifests itself in the prison industrial complex. The concept of imprisonment and punishment is and has been organic to the U.S. and has been shaped into modern-day slavery. The prison system targets POC and promotes racial disparities. In 11 states, at least 1 in 20 adult black males are in prison. In 12 states, more than 50% of the prison population are African American. The nationwide average shows that 1,408 per 100,000 black folks are incarcerated compared to 275 per 100,000 whites.
All of these statistics point to the fact that there's a severe and damaging racial and class bias in the criminal justice system. A racially biased political system in America greatly contributes to the racial and ethnic disparities. In this political climate, we believe it is essential as citizens to contribute to social and criminal justice reform.
What is your name?
My name is Jacob Fry.
What do you do?
I am the mayor of Minneapolis.
Do you think that the current criminal justice system is just and fair?
No, the current criminal justice system is not just, nor is it fair.
What can we do to help gain more equity in Minneapolis and Minnesota?
There's a whole lot we need to be working on right now. Right now, there's a whole lot of institutionalized bias that has been built into the system over many, many years, and we need to work to undo that. And that starts with things like, implicit bias training, restorative justice, bail reform, warrant forgiveness, decriminalization of several different elements that have specifically targeted black and brown people for generations now. So this is not just one thing that we need to be working on. It's a whole spectrum. And in that, I just mentioned the pieces that we need to be working on in the city. I mean, there's also reforming how our prison system functions, which is predominantly at the state and federal level. There's how our judicial system works as well. I mean, this is an issue that literally bleeds into everything in society and needs to be tackled head on.
What are some things you as mayor are doing to help solve injustices in the prison system?
So Minneapolis often starts the ball rolling in the criminal system. We're the ones that start with the initial enforcement of state statutes and of our city ordinances. And I'll give you one example. Marijuana, people talk about marijuana being safe and just and for purposes of health, oftentimes it is. But if you're a black man that's been sitting in jail for the last 20 years because he got caught with a joint, that's not safe at all. That's dangerous. In fact, that's entirely ruinous to your life. And so I believe in legalization of marijuana, but I also believe that we need to be working on how we're enforcing things at the city level as well. Now that's just one piece. That's one piece of a whole spectrum. We need to be making sure that everyone is treated fairly on the street. And we know, just based on statistics nationwide, that black and brown people are far, and specifically men, are far too often targeted. So there's far higher rates of arrest and detention if you're black for the very same aspects as a white person, but the white person doesn't get incarcerated for it.
Have you heard of the bill HF 951?
I have.
Do you believe that if this bill was passed, would it benefit felons?
Well, it would benefit people who have done their time, who have moved beyond the prison system and now should be granted full voting rights. I'm a firm believer that once you've done your time in prison, you shouldn't be doing a second sentence in society. As soon as you get out of prison, you should be able to vote. And we should be encouraging it.
Do you have any specific things that you're doing right now in the city that could help decrease racial disparities?
A whole lot. So yeah, the three core elements that my administration is working on right now are affordable housing, and specifically deeply affordable housing, economic inclusion, which to me means growth, while making sure that that growth goes broadly. The third one is police community relations, including accountability. And all of those three elements have racial equity sort of baked in at its core. We know that housing injustices are disproportionately done to black people. We know that. We know that in terms of economic inclusion, black people have far less access to capital, money. And that is based on the lending criteria, that's based on underwriting, that's based on mortgage fraud that we've seen over decades of time. And right now, we as a city can really push back on that. So we're going to build more low-income housing. We're going to make sure that people have the ability to live in a neighborhood of their choice. We're going to make sure also that, in terms of capital and financing, that black people don't just have access to capital, but they're actually controlling it. They need to be making the decisions. And so we're going to be supporting what will be the only and one of the very first black-owned financial institutions in the state of Minnesota. It's called Village Trust Financial Cooperative. And Village Trust is going to be the entity, the driving force, I believe, behind making some of these financial changes that need to happen in order to build generational wealth in communities of color.
As we continue with these practices, racial disparities and racism increases, and so do the further destruction of our basic human rights. We believe it is important to address these issues and focus on striving towards prison reform. And to do that, we created a petition on May 22, 2018 to support HF 951.
We have an interview with the former NAACP president, Jason Soul. Jason Soul was a formerly convicted felon.
So what is your name?
Jason Marquis Soul.
And what do you do for a living?
I'm the Public Safety Initiative Director for the City of St. Paul.
Did you serve jail time?
Yeah, jail time, prison time. I spent some time in numerous correctional facilities. Yeah.
For how long?
At the height, I think 26 months, but between prison, jail, correctional facility, I think it was like 4.5 years altogether.
Were you able to vote after your sentence?
When I completed, I'll be 40 this year. I've been able to vote maybe twice in my entire life. I used to beat myself up about it, but I just realized the system was screwed up. I mean, I paid a lot of taxes, like throughout my years, but and I used to beat myself up, like, man, I can't vote, but it was because I did wrong. But it was like none of that stuff really made sense. I'm a quote unquote non-violent offender, and I'm not saying that violence has anything to do with it. If I serve my time and I come back to society and I'm paying taxes and I'm contributing and I got a family and I got all these titles, professor and community leader, I should be able to vote, and it's just, it's unconstitutional. It says no taxation without representation. So I haven't been able to vote majority of my life, so I'm at a disadvantage when it comes to politics and I just show up the best way I can, and it's been working.
Do you think that the current criminal justice system is just and fair?
Of course not. I mean, I guess it's fair if you have money. You know what I mean? I don't come from that world either, but it's not fair at all. It's a way to really exterminate, black and brown people, Native American people too. It's a good way to keep people of color just out of the game, where you can't, take care of your family. You can't reproduce. If I'm locked away, I can't have children. I can't, I can't enjoy the quote-unquote American dream if I'm locked away. So it's not fair at all. I mean, we can look at Hennepin County, Ramsey County, we can look at the state of Minnesota. I mean, the criminal justice system works exactly how it's supposed to, where you see majority black people or, people of color in prison. It's like, we're not criminal as a race or as a group. We're not, like, research doesn't support that. But every person you see go to court can't afford a lawyer. They over-sentenced, overcharged. You got police writing false reports, and it creates the same outcome where people like me end up, receiving harsh treatment.
What do you think we can do to help gain more equity?
Put the pressure on the people who are supposed to, create it. There are people who get nice salaries who are supposed to, do their job. I mean, we can push, I'm the past president of the Minneapolis NAACP. I pushed as much as I could and said, hey, you have the ability to write that pen, like you can use that pen and create a different reality. I always pushed and pushed and pushed, but it comes down to, you know, people really just doing the right thing, man. Like, you got people trying to, you know, hypothesize and theorize and do all that stuff, and it's really simple. You know, it's not like it's rocket science at this point. It's like we see what's happening. We just really need to get the people who are in offices to actually do what they said they were going to do, and that's what my main push is. That's why I'm working in the mayor's office in St. Paul under Mayor Carter. You know, he hired me to actually be that push on the inside to say, no, people coming home from prison deserve a second chance. We need to ban the box on housing, because if I can't have a place to stay, I mean, my chances of being successful are really slim. And I went through that. You know, I was almost in tears. The fact that nobody wanted to rent to me after coming home from prison, after I served that time, solitary confinement, all of that harsh stuff. My mom was going through surgery. My brother was being recruited by gangs. And I just was like, man, you know, I come back after doing my time and I still can't vote, can't do anything. So I think it's, you know, really upon, the people who work in the system, the people who are working in corrections, the people who have the jobs to create the equity and help people get back on track. It's just time for them to step up and do their job.
Do you believe that Bill HF 951, if that bill was passed, do you think it would benefit felons?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think people, just research shows if I'm more civically engaged, I'm less likely to get in any kind of trouble. You know, and if we look at, the barriers to education, it's like the barriers keep us more so divided, than bringing us closer together. So the bill will actually help people be able to contribute. Like for me, sitting on the sideline, seeing people go past and I'm voting today, and did you vote today? And it's like, man, do I tell you the story? Do I say, hey, I might be a professor, but I can't cast the ballot. I can't do that. It's like I had to go through that so much where it was just like I didn't feel like I was included or a part of society for so long. But the bill will actually help people gain the confidence. It'll motivate them, and it'll help them stay abreast of who's making the decisions. Because I couldn't vote, I really wasn't keeping up with who was running for office. I wasn't trying to see who was trying to, pass a bill on drug sentencing reform. Because it's like I could sit and talk all till I'm blue in the face, but I really can't manifest it in any real way. I can't go down to say, hey, I vote for this person. So it was like I just stayed on the sidelines and said, man, it's safer for my emotions to not even be involved, because it just hurts too much seeing everybody wear their stickers and post I voted today, and it's like, man, shut up. I'm not trying to hear that, and I probably shouldn't be like that, but that's how I felt. I'm grateful I can vote now, but it'll definitely help some people get just feel better about themselves. And nothing else, it'll make people feel better about themselves. It'll help them be able to see that they can do something after they've fallen short. So that's the beauty of a bill like that. You can actually see yourself doing something different in life, because if everywhere you go it says, nope, you're not welcome here, nope, you can't do this, you feel like you in the 50s and 60s in Jim Crow. So I'll support the bill. From top to bottom, everything needs to be improved, from cops to courts to corrections. The entire, when I say the entire system is guilty, the entire system is guilty. We can improve the cash bail. Everybody doesn't need to pay or hand over money when they get arrested, especially for stuff like trespassing or low-level drugs, people who are using, chemically dependent. A lot of mentally ill people are in prison. I think the research shows 60% of the people incarcerated have a mental illness. So there are a number of things we can do from a public health lens that will actually reduce the prison population, but it's a business. You got people making a lot of money off people incarcerated. My first 4 months in prison, I made 12.5 cents an hour. And I'm like, this is stupid. Like, I got a brain. Like this doesn't make any sense. For what I did, I knew I deserved a punishment, but it's a difference between a consequence and a punishment. It's like for me, I felt I deserved a punishment. I really needed a consequence, and that's like something different. But our current, system is really based off really breaking people. Prison, they tried to break me in prison, and it was like they didn't like me because, for one, I was a Muslim. And the towers fell when I was incarcerated, and I was still firm in my beliefs. So it was like a constant breaking of me. It was like a constant, you go to solitary confinement, you do this. And it was like, I didn't care, So it was like I was ahead of my time in a lot of respects, and everything I did was about harming me. When I was 16 years old, I was going to school with shirts that said Allah on it, and people didn't understand that. People like, and this long time, when I was 16, you weren't even close to being a white border. But when I was 16, it was like, what was that, 1994? That was 94, and it was like, people weren't rocking with anything but Christianity. People like, you know what I'm saying? I mean, we had people practicing, you know, in other parts of the country, but it was like, people really didn't understand me for, you know, like, you know, saying I don't eat pork, I don't do this. And it was like every step of the way I got penalized. I never thought that would lead to prison, though. I never thought it would lead to me being in a prison cell, but my opportunities were always stopped. And that school to prison pipeline was very real for me. I graduated at 17, played basketball, never failed a class in high school. It was like, how did I end up in prison? And it was like, it was always designed that way. So I clearly understand in Minnesota and abroad, because I travel a lot. I was in California last week. I travel a lot. Everywhere I go, I'm seeing the same thing. I'm seeing people of color spending 15 years, 20 years in prison. Many of them are innocent. So for me, every level, from like, you look at the schools, you see the disparities. You look at healthcare, you see the disparity. Anywhere you look, look who's blocked access to wealth. Everywhere I go, I see the same disparities. And if I pass away untimely, my daughters are closer to a jail cell just off how they push certain people into prison. Like, and many of them don't deserve it. So the whole system is guilty from top to bottom. Like, it's a strategy to keep people who are black, to keep people who are poor, to keep people who don't represent the status quo out of the way. And you know, you have me in prison. I think you should be able to vote while you're in prison. You know what I mean? You still being counted like for the census. I think you still should have a right to vote while incarcerated. But we're not gonna push that far yet. We just saying people who are free should be allowed to vote. So I support the bill, but you know, you got a lot of forces that don't want people to ever get a chance. And the fact of the matter is, the people who got the money, who are well connected, the people who are white, they pay to cover up their sins. They pay to, you know, make sure it never even makes it to court. They can work out stuff with the police officer, like, hey, you know who my cousin is? You know, like, they do stuff like that, and they act like we're just bad people and they want to write us off, and it's just time for that to change. So hope the bill goes far. Hope you get 10 million signatures on that petition, and I support you.
Disenfranchisement in Minnesota is very restrictive, and nearly 13% of otherwise eligible African American males were disenfranchised in 2011. Felon disenfranchisement affects more than 63,000 Minnesotans as of 2011 and greatly contributes to racial disparities. We support this bill that is ultimately 1. Decrease racial disparities in Minnesota, and 2. Bring back one of the most important American rights. We have thousands of signatures in our petition, and we hope to make a difference in this state. It's important to note that disenfranchisement affects too many Americans across the U.S., specifically targeting POC. We have an interview with Jolise. Her father served 3 years in prison and 2 years in parole. He had lost his rights to vote while incarcerated.
Hi, I'm Jolise. I'm a freshman at South High School. So.
Do you know anyone who's been through the prison system?
Yeah, my dad actually did a couple years in prison and 3 years of parole.
Did your dad have the right to vote while he was in prison?
No, and when he was on parole, he didn't get to vote either.
So how did he feel about not having the right to vote?
I mean, like, during that whole time, he didn't feel, like, disappointed or sad or anything because, like, he took full responsibility for his actions.
Do you think your dad believes people should have the right to vote while they are incarcerated?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, he was talking to me about it, and he said that he doesn't feel like they make them feel like members of society, and it feels like he's isolated in society when he was on parole and in prison. He felt isolated because he didn't have any rights, basically.
We hope that this documentary provided useful and relevant information about the criminal system and disenfranchisement in Minnesota. We will continue to push for this bill to be passed and for prison reform.